Hello everyone, I am Apurva Tirwarkar and this video in particular is to talk about today, the 15th of August, which is symbolic for the day that the British Empire retreated. The colonial rule was taken away from India, or rather was pushed out of India because of India's freedom struggle, which, well, to be very honest, started the day the British people started invading India. And I wanted to talk about the implications that this day has and the symbolic representation that this day has had for so many years, which on today or as of right now is the 75th year of independence. And it is very symbolic for many reasons. But there's also one more thing I wanted to kind of touch upon. So let's start from the beginning. 15th of August is celebrated as Independence Day to celebrate the retreat of British Empire from India, and it also celebrated India moving from an imperial rule to a democratic rule. However, for 75 years strong, India has consistently tried to make itself known to the rest of the world as somebody, or rather a country that is, you know, very strong, worth its metal. Now, it is not just symbolic of this particular point that it has become more democratic or that it has become different from the identity that was set many years ago. India has now become very important in the world in general because of the fact that it has now become a very common talking point. The way we used to talk about America many years ago, over these 75 years, India has become that type of talk. Agreed, it's not yet the superpower that the revered Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who sadly is not with us, but he used to imagine a world that in 2020 India would be a superpower. We are still not there, but there is a lot of hope for the next few years, or rather, let's hope the next decade, because change takes time, I guess. The fact of the matter, however, is this day, today, 15th of August, does in fact represent something much more important. It represents today for the people of India today. 15th of August represents a new independently thinking society, a new independently thinking citizen society, and all of the citizens that India has. All of them are now very much open to all of the things that are going on. They are open minded, they like to understand what is going on. They are very educated. Agreed, it might not be on terms with the academic education that we consider, but social education is also something that has now become much more prevalent in India. And that, especially the youth, is much more well versed in social education, which is something that India is now opening up to. Varying societal norms, varying different uh, ideas, varying different interests, varying different orientations, and all of this stuff that has just recently started entering India. Well, not entering India, it has been part of India, but recently it has started entering people's mind and people's hearts. Everybody is now becoming more and more warm, more and more open to new ideas, more and more able to voice their own opinions. And it just, it's, I guess, this particular moment that I want to use to give a message to all of those who are hopeful for the future of India. And to those, obviously, who think India is not having a hopeful future. But for both the lovers and the haters, this is a message that I would like to put forth. India has always, and when I say always, even during the time of the British rule and even before the time of the British rule, India has, by principle, always been open to everything. And India has always been the hub of knowledge for pretty much the entire Asian region. And before that, all of those major civilizations were always constantly interacting with each other, exchanging information, exchanging knowledge, increasing their knowledge reservoirs. And India has been a large player in that particular knowledge trade. And I have a message which pertains to that particular ideology. I feel like in today's world, not just India but in the world in general, there's a lot of misinformation which is propagated by the fact that people don't stop to think, they don't stop to listen, they just want to talk. Voicing an opinion is all well and good. It's your right. You have a right to voice your opinion. But I feel like when you're voicing an opinion, you need to take a step back before you publicly voice your opinion. To step back, think about whether you should just point out the problems that you see or whether you should be able to provide a solution to the problems. Pointing out a problem is all well and good, but that does not mean that that is your job and you've done your work. If you're a part of this particular society, think of it as an organization. In an organization, if you're part of this organization, you're expected to, if you have a problem, you're expected to be able to give a solution to make the organization better. We're all part of this organization that is known as India, and it is our basic right to point out what is not going well, but it is also our duty, our responsibility as citizens of this country to also provide solutions and, most importantly, to be civil about everything. Now, you might be thinking, okay, and this is something that has crossed my mind many times. Why is it that if we are independent, why is it that we let the colonial rule, the English rule, end 75 years ago? Why is it that even after that, 75 years after that, people are still propagating such messages using English? I think, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like, and because this is very important for the message I want to give, the world in its entirety has become more fluent in the use of this language, in the use of English. Yes, local messages need to be given in local languages, but when you talk about a nationwide connector, English is, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever the case may be for each person, it is the single strand that, or single string that connects every single one of us together. Yes, having a language like Hindi, Marathi, and many of those other hundreds of different languages, dialects, and all of that stuff that we have in India, communicating in that would be preferable. But it's not the case right now. And this brings me to my next point. We want a perfect society. But a perfect society does not just come up because you immediately decide new rules and society decides that these are the norms, we want this, if not this, then nothing. That is not how it works. This is a form of extremism. When you hit one particular extreme, you need to understand that as a society, nobody is just black or white. There's a gray area in between. And people just mention this phrase, but nobody actually takes the time to sit down and listen to the other person's opinion. Nobody tries to think of it as not a completely polarizing opposite opinion, but rather a wide spectrum of opinions. If you ask a question that is supposed to be a yes or no question, it becomes hard because many times people think that yes, there is a gray area in between where, I mean, it is yes, but it also kind of is no. And in this new India that we are hoping is going to develop with the new youth of this country, I want the new youth to not embody the extreme ideals that the entire world used to follow, but rather the openness, the understanding, the empathy of the new generation that we are developing. We take the core principles of our culture, of our tradition, and then we bring it forward and we create our own new philosophy, our own new ideal, our own new ideology. The new norm is always different from the old norm. But we also need to understand that society evolves. And if we want to evolve as a community, as a society, as a country, if we want to evolve, if we want to be better as people, and I'm not talking about better than other countries, I'm talking about being better than ourselves 10 years ago. If we are not better than ourselves from the past, then we're not going to be better than ourselves in the future. And that is my message. I just want to put this out there that when we talk about Independence Day, we all talk about the fact that patriotism is a very large part of our lives and everybody is patriotic. Everybody has a different way of showing patriotism. Some people might feel like their daily lives themselves, the work they do for their country, is patriotic. Some people might feel that having an open display of patriotism is much better. Everybody is, allowed to do what they want, to each their own. But no matter what way you choose to show your patriotism, make sure that you are also not suppressing the other people's display. You are doing what you feel is right. They are doing what they feel is right. Somebody else is doing what they feel is right. There is never going to be a complete standard show or standard display of patriotism or standard display of valor or standard display of pride in our country. There is never going to be a standard per se because India is a rainbow of various different societies. But there is going to be, or rather, there should be, a standard of humanity, and that standard of humanity begins by stopping and listening to the person in front of you. And when I say listening, I mean actually listening to their opinions, taking your time to compare their opinions and their ideals to your opinions and ideals. Once you have these two compared, once you have these two ideals brought together, you will find out that you can, and this is a very, 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 very important thing, you can always find a middle ground. There is always a middle ground. And if you are unable to find a middle ground, then that is the biggest issue with the society. So, in the words of my favorite influencers, Abhi and Neo, हमारे ओपननेस से और हमारे एक दूसरे को समझने की कोशिश से फ़र्क पड़ता है.